If you asked me a couple months ago, does Metroid Prime need to be remastered? I would have told you with supreme confidence, absolutely not. It was essentially remastered already when ported to the Wii as part of the trilogy. Not to mention, the vanilla release on GameCube still holds up shockingly well. Its world is vast, it looks impressive, and it runs smoothly. Sure, Wii U eShop is shutting down, so it's not going to be the easiest game to obtain, but even still, I can think of about 100 other games more in need of a touch-up. But clearly, this isn't about need. Instead, it's about refining and honoring one of the best games ever made, and bringing it to a bigger audience, including many younger players who might be experiencing it for the first time. So when Metroid Prime Remastered was revealed and released on that one fateful day in February, I'd never been more happy to be wrong. Seeing the reveal for this game and then downloading it just a few minutes later was a surreal experience. And right away, when I dove in, it was easy to notice this is a serious visual upgrade. Motion is smooth, textures are vastly more detailed, and everything has just a little bit of gloss. When I look at it, I don't think up-res GameCube game. Instead, I think new 3D Metroid game on Switch, and that feels amazing to say. Admittedly, the graphical upgrade is definitely less noticeable in indoor space station type areas, but it really shines in the natural environments. Emerging in rainy Talon overworld blew my mind this time even more than it did in the original, and the more extreme biomes in places like Magmore Caverns and Phendrana Drifts are a true sight to behold. In substance, Metroid Prime Remastered is very true to the original. This is just about as faithful as a remaster can get. Samus still walks around at the same speed, the soundtrack is still one of the best in gaming, missile and energy upgrades are still in the same locations you remember, and that first stretch into Phazon Mines is still super brutal. There's no new side story or added epilogue here. It's purely Metroid Prime with a new coat of paint. And a bit of a PSA here for new players who might be watching this review. Don't get turned off by this game being an FPS. If you don't like first-person shooters, don't worry because I'm right there with you. I'm notoriously horrible at first-person games and even worse at shooters. Literally the only other shooting game I play is Splatoon, and I'm not really even good at that one either. Yet Metroid Prime is different. At this point, what I'm about to say is almost a cliche in the conversation surrounding this game, but it rings true. This isn't as much of a first-person shooter as it is a first-person adventure. You'll be spending far more time exploring and observing than with any precise aiming or gun combat. This isn't to say you won't find yourself in your fair share of battles, since there are some really annoying enemy types that will aggro Samus every chance they get, but most of the time you'll be in a zen-like state, combing through each area looking for hidden passageways or environmental puzzles that will help create a new way forward. Metroid Prime is the king of immersive games, and this remaster is even more so, due to impressive updated controls that are fully customizable. This makes it so every player can customize Samus's movement and shooting to their liking, eliminating immersion-breaking control quirks, letting them simply melt away into the adventure. Metroid Prime Remastered allows purists to use the classic single-stick controls from the GameCube version, and you can even go the extra mile by using an actual GameCube controller via the Wii U adapter. But also, if you're used to playing this game on the Wii trilogy, like I was by this point, you can easily switch to pointer controls, and I think holding the Joy-Con in both hands works best for the motion control setup, as it replicates the Wii experience very well. There's also a hybrid setting, which combines classic single-stick controls with motion-based aiming. And finally, there are the newly added dual-stick controls, which give you the ability to move Samus and her arm cannon independently, using the two analog sticks on the Switch controller. Despite being mainly reliant on the sticks, this method still responds to the controller's motion as well, letting players make quick twitch adjustments to the cursor's position. This felt great right off the bat. Even having played this game several times with the older control schemes, I was shocked at how quickly dual stick became natural for me. And because of this, I do think it to now be the most effective way to play. play. It marries the smooth stability of dual stick camera controls with the speed and accuracy of gyro aiming to create the best feeling first-person experience I've ever played. Despite it being a 3D game, Metroid Prime works, in essence, just like any of the 2D Metroid titles that came before it. Samus arrives on the isolated planet and before long suffers damage to her power suit, thus stripping her of all her abilities, and forcing us to scour the planet in search of them, which in turn will allow us to access new areas, where we'll find even more abilities, and the loop goes on and on. For example, finding the Morph Ball bombs will allow you to take on and defeat Flagra, which then gives you the Varia suit, which allows you to withstand the heat of Magmore Caverns, which will allow you to reach Phendrana Drifts to collect the Boost Ball. Having the Boost Ball will then let you ride the half-pipes you passed in Chozo Ruins in order to reach the Space Jump Boots, which will then open up several more areas for you. This really is a 3D first-person Metroidvania, and I can speak from experience in saying it was pretty darn cool when I finally realized that. One of the main tools you'll use on your adventure is the scan visor. Just about every part of this planet has flora and fauna that should be registered in your logbook, and switching to your scan visor and getting the lowdown on everything you possibly can will pay off in one way or another. Not only for 100% completion's sake, but also because scanning often hints you toward an enemy's weak point, or a certain piece of the environment you'll need to interact with. But perhaps equally as important is the amount of story and world details you'll get if you scan Chozo lore and Space Pirate logs. You'll gradually discover more and more about this planet, the civilization that resided here, and the evil force you're up against. And scanning every new enemy to get insights on its morphology and behavior makes me feel like a real-life wildlife researcher. Using the scan visor is such a fun and clever form of passive world building that I really haven't seen matched in the over 2 decades since. Over the course of the game, you'll find boss enemies guarding some of Samus's stronger abilities. Metroid Prime's bosses don't quite reach the heights of some of the fights in 2D Metroid games, but I'll admit, that's kinda like comparing apples to oranges. Prime's 3-dimensional movement and our comparatively smaller view of the action leads to a different kind of boss fight. These mainly consist of dodging with either a well-timed jump or sideways dash, and some can feel more like a slower-paced puzzle than anything else. Boss difficulty ramps up concurrently with Samus getting stronger. For example, the Parasite Queen fight is pretty much a glorified tutorial for the lock-on button, but later fights like Thardus, Sheegoth, and Omega Pirate are grueling encounters that can feel like a marathon. These require you to keep a cool head and manage resources effectively in order to outlast the beast. Metroid Prime Remastered has a pretty short runtime of around 15 hours, or even less if you know what you're doing. However, for first-timers, this play clock will easily double or even triple, since getting lost backtracking and using in-game cues to find the next path forward is not a fast process, but one that I would argue is an essential part of the Metroid Prime experience. I highly recommend going into this game blind and finding out how to progress organically. Getting lost on Talon 4 is something I truly wish I could experience again for the first time, and for new players, doing so on this beautiful remaster will make it even more magical. Metroid Prime was a formative game for me. It's something from my childhood that I'm highly nostalgic for. So even though Prime is a widely loved game, I fully accept that I might hold it on a bit of a pedestal. But even still, I genuinely struggle to find anything wrong with Metroid Prime. Truly, I've sat down and tried to poke holes in this game, looking desperately for something to complain about, but I can't. To me, the original Metroid Prime is a perfect game, and the port inside the Wii trilogy improved controls, making it an even better experience. But I don't think anyone was prepared for what Nintendo did with Metroid Prime Remastered. Its perfection perfected. A true labor of love, something refined over decades and lovingly touched up with modern resources, like renovating an old house that's built on a piece of old but still beautiful land. Remastered is, without a shadow of a doubt, the definitive version of one of the greatest games of all time. It's so far the best video game to release in 2023 by a mile, and at the mind-boggling price of $39.99 US, I couldn't possibly recommend it more highly.